Do you want to learn more about water softeners, how they work, how to maintain, installation suggestions, tips and tricks, what kind of salt to use, etc.? Do you have some questions about water softeners? Well, check out this Q&A session on water softeners starting right now. Hi, I'm Gary the Water Guy, and I simplify water filtration to help you conquer crappy water for your family. Here's my water softener Q&A live stream replay. Lots of great information for you starting now. Oh, we have from Joel Roman, how many pounds of salt should a softener use for a 10 by 54 tank? Well, 10 by 54 tank is usually somewhere around a 45,000 or a 60,000 grain tank. And so per regeneration, those are typically set for around 12 to 15 pounds of salt. Now, how often it regenerates is going to determine how much salt you're going to end up using ultimately. And that's where the settings come in. So, as I was talking earlier about water testing, so you really need to test your water for hardness and make the raw water before the water softener to make sure the water softener is set correctly. Because if the hardness settings are incorrect, you're either going to be using too much salt to get your soft water, or you're not going to be using enough salt, which means that you're going to have sporadic hard water and soft water. So have the water tested, set your water softener to the correct settings. What are the correct settings? So let's say you have a hardness of 10. Okay, so then typically you'd set the water softener for a hardness of 10, and then we always include a safety factor of 2. So you'd set the water softener for a hardness of 12. Now, the difference is if you're on well water and you've got iron in your water, then you need to compensate for that iron, because the water softener will also remove iron up to a point. So let's say you've got 1 part per million of iron, you use 5 as a compensating factor. So for every 1 part per million of iron, you use 5 grains per gallon of hardness. So again, if your hardness was 10, you'd go 10 plus 5 for the iron is 15, plus 2 is the safety factor. So you'd be setting your water softener for a hardness of 17. And all right, so thanks for your questions, folks. That's great. That's a great start. And so I've got a few more questions here that I've teed up ahead of time for folks that have asked me directly. Now, I should mention, actually, before I get to these questions again, so we're live today till 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're answering questions. Please feel free to enter our contest. And our contest is all about submitting ideas, video ideas for Gary to make, Gary the Water Guy. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take contests or ideas for making new videos, and I'm going to go through them, and you can submit those video ideas to the end of the day tomorrow, March the 1st. I'm going to choose the best 3, and then I'm going to post them to the community tab on our YouTube channel. Where's the community tab here? Hang on, let me show you that. And so if you see here, there's a few headings across the top here. And so you can see here that it shows home, videos, playlist, and community. If you click on that community tab, that's our community channel. And so if you go in there, there's lots of information. You can kind of scroll through and see what's there already. I did a poll a month or so ago, something like that, and I asked for my first live stream what topics, and I had 3 suggestions on there. One was water softener Q&A, which won, and then there was a reverse osmosis Q&A, which we're going to be running on April the 4th at 1 p.m. Hopefully we won't have technical glitches like we did at the beginning of this one. And then the third one was UV or ultraviolet disinfection. So, but on the community tab, that's where you'll see the poll, and you'll be able to vote for a week or so. And whoever wins that will get that tool caddy. It's a great tool caddy. I love those things. You put your tools on the outside, but it's a bucket in the middle. So what happens is you can put all your wet filters inside and that kind of thing. And all right, so let's go to have a look and see some questions that a lot of folks are asking me on my YouTube videos, or as a response to my YouTube videos, and maybe it'll help you with some information. So what's the difference between big box store water softeners and the more expensive ones sold by water treatment dealers? And There's a big difference. I mean, generally speaking, the water softeners, well, actually all the water softeners we sell are all made in North America water softeners. So the build quality is definitely there. They last a long time, 15, 20, 25 years. I've got customers in the 20 to 25 year range, and their water softeners are still going strong. The big box stores, those are the ones that are typically made in overseas, Korea, China, places like that, and they don't last very long. But it's really hard to say how long they're going to last. They can last for 3 or 4 years. I've replaced some that have been 3 years old. I've seen others last 8, 9, 10, 12 years. So it's a bit of a crapshoot with those ones. You never know how long they're going to last. Trying to get parts, super, super tough. Trying to even just get a manual with a parts list is super, super tough. They do give you an 800 number. They do have pretty good warranties as long as it's within the first year. But yanking out a water softener and replacing it with another water softener is no fun for anyone. But it's generally speaking, the life expectancy is the biggest difference, and the serviceability of the big box stores. All right, so Keith Long's got a question here. I have a well and get a strong smell. How do I get rid of it? And a lot of sand in my filter. Well, there's a couple ways that you can get rid of. Let's talk about the sand one first. So the sand one is sediment in your water. So obviously a cartridge type filter, and I'm sure that's what Keith is using now. The only problem probably is that he's changing that filter way too often. So there's a couple things you can do. You can go with a spin down filter, and again, when I finish this, I'll put some links to these items that I'm discussing in the comment section down below. But you can get a spin down filter, you can hook that on. Often that's connected between the well and the pressure tank, actually before the pressure tank. One of the few things we actually connect before the pressure tank. And basically it's a filter that has an element inside a screen, basically, and all the dirt collects on that screen. And then once a week, or once every week, or once every 2 weeks, you open up a valve at the bottom. What it does is it creates centrifugal force inside that filter. That's why it's called a spin-down filter. And you put a bucket underneath, and it flushes all the debris out. So if you've got a lot of sand in your water, that's a good way to deal with it. Another good way is you can go with an automatic backwashing filter. So an automatic backwashing filter kind of looks like this water softener that I've got sitting over here. It's just that it's not a water softener. It has a media inside that the sand accumulates inside, and then it automatically backwashes, again, much like a water softener, to clean itself out. So the beauty of these kind of filters are that you don't have to keep changing them. And like I say, if you run into a lot of sediment, we run into that. Often when someone's dealing with a surface water source, like drawing water from a lake or a stream or something like that for a cottage or a cabin, there's a lot of sediment in the water. And then that's why we end up installing these ones. So they're pretty common in areas like that. Let's talk about the smell. So if the smell is sulfur, it's that rotten egg smell. And that's a very common problem, especially in my local area here in cottage country. We deal with that all the time. In fact, my house has that sulfur smell. I mean, obviously I fixed it, and how we fix it is we aerate it. And so you can do the test yourself. You pour a glass of your water, it smells like sulfur, you let it sit for a while, it's gone. Why is it gone? It's because the air has gotten to it and it's oxidized out that sulfur from the water, and that's why the smell is gone. And how do you get rid of sulfur? Well, again, it's you use a product called an FOC. We have them on our websites, either waterestore.ca or waterestore.com in the United States, and they oxidize the sulfur out of the water. I mean, the beauty of the system is they're totally chemical free. There's no chemicals to add. There's no chemicals that get into your septic system or like a chlorine injection system or something like that. But the media lasts a long time. Anywhere from 15 to 20 years, something like that. And so the beauty of it, you just put it in. Every 3 days it backwashes, and when it backwashes, it sucks in air, and that air is used to oxidize out that sulfur. If you have some iron in your water, it'll do it too. Now, the iron levels are quite critical, whether you need an FOC, as I mentioned, or an FOB for higher iron contents, or an FOK for high amounts of sulfur and high amounts of iron in your water. When you have both present, you need that FOK. But again, I'll put some links in the comments down below. You can check out some of these things once this live stream is done, which, as I should mention, is we're going to go until 2 p.m. today. And like I say, I'm looking for your questions. I really appreciate all the comments that I've received so far. It's great. My biggest fear today was I'm going to be here and nobody's going to be nobody's going to be tuned in. So I appreciate you watching today, that's for sure. And all right, so let's talk about some of the other questions I get routinely on my as a result of my videos. So one question was, plumbers sell water softeners too. Why not just call a plumber and have them install one? And that happens a lot. Someone's renovating a home, or they've just moved to a new home and they notice some scale buildup and some staining in that from their hard water. And so they just phone up the plumber and say, hey, I need a water softener. The plumber says, okay, sure. And they install a water softener. Problem is, often plumbers don't test your water. And it always comes back to the testing. And I've seen so many water softeners that have been installed where the water was a hardness of 10 or 12 or sometimes even 8, and the water softener is set to the factory default because someone didn't test the water, which was 25. So what happens is the water softener ends up using 2 or 3 times as much salt and 2 or 3 times as much water to regenerate over all the years that unit was installed, just because someone didn't test the water when it was first installed. And I've seen water softeners like that have been installed for 15 years. And so it's super, super important to have that water tested. Whether if you have a plumber install it, great, no problem. I do lots of work with plumbers, and I really appreciate working with plumbers. At the local college here, I did a presentation to the third-year class on water filtration, and they were just glued to every word that I was saying. And I really appreciate that because I specialize in this very small area of water treatment, whereas plumbers deal with a much, much larger area. So I really appreciate their comments. And so like I say, having a plumber install your water softener, absolutely no problem. Just make sure the water gets tested. Do you have no way of testing your water? Well, again, I'll put a link to a video of mine in the comment section down below that talks about having your water tested. All else fails, mail us a water sample. We'll test your water for hardness for free, and you go from there. All right, when should I be adding salt to my water softener? Well, that's again, I've got a great video that talks a little bit about that, but generally speaking, the salt level should be higher than the water level in your water softener. But that's assuming that you've got a post-fill water softener. In other words, where it puts the water in with the brine at the last cycle, the last part of the regeneration cycle. If you've got a pre-fill water softener, it doesn't really matter because it puts the water in at the beginning. So you don't know how high the water level is. So with the pre-fill water softeners, you have to be careful because you can, if you let the water, the salt level drop down so low that when it pre-fills with water, the water level is going to be higher than the salt. And that water can't absorb the salt. And that's the key here. That when the water goes in to absorb the salt to make the brine, is the water has to be able to touch it. Well, the only way it can touch it is if the salt level is higher than the water. You see that if all the water that's above the salt isn't touching the salt, so it can't absorb the salt, so it won't be the right concentration of sodium to make that brine to properly regenerate that water softener. So that's always a concern. It's funny, modern water softeners now are so efficient in that, but for some bizarre reason, I still see these huge brine tanks. And it's one of the things I like about the Water Boss and Aquamaster water softeners. The brine tank is very small. They only hold a bag or a bag and a half of salt. So to overfill it doesn't happen that often. And what happens is a water softener, they're generally sized for a family of 4 or 5 or something like that. But so many times I see water softeners installed for a family of 2 or 1 person. Well, if you jam that water softener full of salt, the salt at the bottom becomes liquefied. The salt above it presses down and forces it down. It doesn't turn over very quickly. You end up with that salt clog situation, which is one of my most popular videos ever, is how to remove a salt clog from a water softener. And in case you're interested, I'll put a link to that in the description or in the comments section down below, and you can check that out in the future when you get a chance. All right, so let's see what else I've got here. Identify myself for you. And if I'm on a municipal water source, why do I need a water softener at all? Well, municipal water sources, they make sure your water is safe, it's bacteria-free. They have certain parameters within which your water has to be. So your iron level has to be within a certain standard, etc. But hardness is considered an aesthetic. So I've seen areas where the water is a hardness of 3 or 4, and I've seen other areas where the water hardness is 20, 30 or even 35 on a municipal water source. So it really depends. But if you're getting some scale, some staining, some buildup, etc., that's hard water, and they should really have it tested, and then from there think about going with a water softener. So I got another question here from Keith. Oh, that's great. He's asking about what's a good cleaner for a system. So I assume a water softener cleaner. So I use a product called ResCare. I'll put a link to a video down below that talks about ResCare. So if you don't have high levels of iron in your water, ResCare is a good choice. But I suspect Keith has iron, and probably in addition to the sulfur that he's been talking about. So there's a problem called iron out too, or iron care, or something like that. Again, I'll put a link to the video down below in the comments section that you can check it out, and it tells you exactly how to use that product. These cleaners are the unsung heroes of water softener maintenance, I'll tell you. I've seen water softeners that hadn't been working for a while that just seemed dead. We put this ResCare through, or this iron remover type of product, chemical through. It's amazing the difference that it made. Brought the unit back to life, and the customers got many more years out of it. So definitely consider using that. Don't have to overuse it. I mean, once or twice a year, half a cup or a cup, something like that, it works great. And so that's good. So let's continue on, unless I see any more questions pop up on the chat box here on the right hand side. And so how long does a water softener last? And so again, it really depends on, first of all, it has to be cared for properly. So I'm assuming it's cared for properly. But it's such a wide gamut. I mean, you see some of these water softeners, the big box store water softeners, or the really inexpensive ones. They're really old technology that's been copied by a Korean or Chinese manufacturer. It's such a crapshoot with those ones. They can last a few years, they can last a few years longer. But it's all over the map. I mean, a quality made in North America water softener will easily last you 15 to 20 years with just normal maintenance. And often much longer. I've got some customers that are 25, 30-year range, and that's not a problem at all. So great, I'm getting a question here from KOB Productions. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate people joining us today for this live stream, my first live stream. And so let's see what they've got for me here today. And so they're asking, they have a Fleck 24,000 grain water softener, don't know how long I should set the brine fill time. My hardness is 10 grains per gallon. Brine fill time. So it should be actually calculated through the valve. Like, so when that water softener was engineered, they should have set that up. It depends on the flow rate. So they have a little flow restrictor on the brine line, and that determines. So if that flow restrictor is 0.1 gallons per minute, then you have to do a calculation. So there's a chart. I'll put a link to the manual for a Fleck 5600. I assume that's what you have, 5600 valve. I'll put a link to the manual down below. But from there you can do a calculation. I'm assuming you're working on this yourself, and it hasn't been engineered from a factory. But you can do a calculation based on the size of the tank and your water hardness, and the flow rate, like I say, a restrictor that's on the brine line, and you have to calculate all that to figure out the exact time, because the time is going to determine how much water goes in. How much water goes in is going to determine how much salt it uses, it takes to make the brine, and the concentration, and then from there it's going to be used to regenerate the water softener. I'm not a real pro on Fleck water softeners. It's in doing this for 16 or 17 years. I think we've installed 2, and I've serviced maybe 30 or 40. It's not. I lean much more toward the Clack water softeners. I believe it's a much better product, and it's a much more efficient product. So unfortunately, I can't help you a whole lot with that. And yes, I see 5600. Yeah, so I'll put a link to the manual down below, and you can check it out and go from there. Thanks for the question. I really appreciate your input today. And all right, so let's see what else we got here for questions. where's the best place to purchase salt for your water softener? So that's always a great question. So again, I'll put a link to a video down below that talks about what's the best type of salt to use for your water softener. In a nutshell, the best type of salt to use is one that's pure salt and that kind of looks like a pill or a lozenge or something like that. The kind of salt that my least favorite kind of salt is rock salt. So rock salt has dirt in it, and that's why if you look at the processed salt, you'll see it's nice and white and bright because it's 99% pure salt. It doesn't have dirt in it, right? The other kind of the rock salt has dirt in it, and that's why it's sort of a gray color. So what happens is rock salt's much cheaper, absolutely, but that dirt. So what happens is the water dissolves the salt and use that to make the brine, but the dirt stays behind. Not all of it though. So what happens is when it goes through a regeneration cycle, it sucks that dirt from the brine tank and runs it through, and it ends up clogging your injector, it ends up clogging all kinds of little areas. Plus, that dirt ends up in the bottom of your brine tank, and so you've got this dirt sitting in there with your brine. So definitely rock salt is out. The other kind of salt I'm not very happy with is crystal salt or something like that. It looks like a bunch of pieces of broken glass. It's all jagged, all little edges and that kind of thing. I find that kind of salt really clogs a water softener very, very easily. And so, I mean, we try to keep these things as low maintenance as possible, but crystal salt, I'm just not happy with it at all. The other thing is potassium chloride. So potassium chloride is an alternative to water softener salt. And I see that KOB Productions here mentioned, love your videos, Gary, keep up the good work. Thanks very much. I really appreciate positive comments like that, and I really appreciate you keep watching them and share them. Share them on social media. Share them on Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media you use. I really like to get the word out there. And so we were talking about salt and the types of salt to use in water softeners. Potassium chloride, super expensive, usually 3 or 4 times as much as typical water softener salt. And it's only 80% as efficient, so you end up using a whole lot more than you do with water softener salt. And boy, does that stuff ever clog. I've never seen anything clog water softeners more than potassium chloride, so you have to be really, really careful. So again, one of the links I'm putting in the comments section down below is going to be about choosing what kind of water softener salt you should choose and how much salt you should use and put in your water softener to help you kind of figure that out to minimize the chances of clogging. But if you end up with that clog, no problem. I've got a great video that talks about that too. And all right, so let's move on a little bit here. How do I know if I need a water softener? Well, I've been in, like I said, in this business 16 or 17 years now, and I always ask the customer, are they getting symptoms of hard water? Are they getting staining? Are they, I get the odd customer that says to me, hey Gary, test my water and tell me if I need a water softener. And I can test their water, and it might be a hardness of 2, or it might be hardness of 4, or it might be a hardness of 8 or 10. And it all depends, because if you've had a water softener before, a hardness of 4 is going to be too hard for you, because all of a sudden now you're going to get staining, and you're going to get some buildup that you didn't have before. If you've never had a water softener, and you've always lived with a hardness of 10, you've learned to compensate for it. You've learned to do other things for it. Is it going to affect your tankless hot water heater? Absolutely. When it comes time to repair a leaky faucet, are you going to be able to take it apart and repair it? Nope. You're going to have to tear it apart. You're going to have to tear it out and put it in a new faucet because the lime scale built up will be so much in there that there's no way that you'd be able to service that properly. So that's what I mean. I always ask people for symptoms. Are you getting symptoms? I mean, glass shower doors, the new homes now are pretty much all being built with glass shower doors. Well, if you've got hard water, anything over about 4 or 5, something like that, you're going to have stains. There's no question about that. And I've got a little chart here. Let me just see where it is here. Right there. So have a look at this chart. You'll see that softened water 0 to 0.5 grains. And I always tell people 0 or 1 is soft water. In and around that range when we test it. 1 to 3.5 is lake or surface water. You really don't need a water softener in and around that range, unless, like I say, you've had one before and you're a really picky person. Nothing wrong with being a picky person. I'm a picky person, and no softener is really needed in and around that range. But if you want one, you can definitely go with one. Then 7 to 10.5 grains. So definitely you need a water softener in and around this range for most people. Again, if you learn to compensate with it, you might not need one. And so you can't use an on-demand hot water heater, a tankless type hot water heater, and or a UV light. The pre-treatment requirements for UV light is 7 grains per gallon of hardness or less. Then you get to 10.5 to 14. Most homes would need a water softener. You'll have quite a bit of scale and staining buildup in that. And you have extremely hard water, 14 and over. Yeah, you'll typically need a water softener there. Otherwise, you'll definitely get some staining and buildup. What's the hardest? What's the hardest water I've ever tested? 100. I had a couple customers that had 100 grains per gallon of hardness, and that is extremely hard water. I mean, if it's in a new house or you're just having a well drilled and you've got 100 grains per gallon of hardness, the first question I always ask folks that have something like that is drilling another well an option? Is looking elsewhere for water is an option? I mean, if it's a waterfront property, maybe you can draw from surface water or something like that. Because when you start getting around 100 grains per gallon of hardness, that's super, super hard. So definitely you don't want to be looking at anything like that. That's for sure. And all right, so I should just take a second here and talk a little bit more about our contest. So we're having a contest, and we're looking for submissions from you on topics for videos, because I'm going to be making new videos. I post a new video every Saturday to YouTube on water filtration, and I'm looking for ideas. And so I'm hoping that you can submit some ideas today. If not, the deadline is midnight tomorrow night, March the 1st. And so if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. What do you win in the contest? Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to take the best 3 submissions, and then I'm going to ask you to vote on them. And where you're going to vote is in the community tab of my YouTube channel. So if you go to my YouTube channel, Gary the Water Guy, and then you'll see a couple tabs across the place, videos about things like that, and you'll see one that says community. So on there I'm going to put a poll, and you're going to vote on there to see which one wins. The winner's going to get one of these tool caddies that go on the outside of this bucket. I'm not including the tools, not including the bucket, just the blue part, the tool caddy. I think these things are great, especially for water filtration maintenance, things like that. You can put the tools on the outside. Even has a holder here for tape, duct tape, I don't know, Teflon tape, I guess, maybe. And then you can put the wet filters inside here. Just carry the filters to the job site. I really like using it. It's a great thing. And like I say, I really appreciate it if you enter our contest. And I should mention too about that community tab. There's lots of stuff on there. I put little Giphies on there. I put little outtakes from different videos and other information that I'll be posting there about once a week or something like that. So definitely check it out. And again, I should mention that we are going to be doing another live stream. That's April 4th, which is a Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will be on reverse osmosis drinking water systems. I certainly encourage you to check it out. It's fun interacting with you during this live stream, and I really appreciate the support that you've given me. So, all right, let's have a look at a few other things. Should I have a pre-filter before the water softener? This one here, again, it's not a black and white answer. In a perfect world, yes. Every water softener would have a pre-filter before it. However, somebody's got to change that pre-filter. And if you're on a municipal water system, 99% of the time, unless there's a huge amount of sediment in your water, you really don't need it. And the reason is, in a perfect world, you put it on, it'd be great. But the problem is someone's got to change that filter. And if it's a situation where it's an elderly couple or a widow or widower or that kind of thing, to ask them to change that filter is just too much work. To have a service call just to have someone come in for 5 minutes to change a filter, it is a lot of work. So generally speaking, you don't need a filter before a water softener, but if you have a lot of dirt in your water, absolutely. We do some work with a series of homes that are on a waterfront area, and they've got lots of sand in their water. So they have a big 20-inch Big Blue sediment filter on before every water softener, because if they didn't, it would totally clog those water softeners and they'd be toast in no time. So it depends on the situation. In most situations, like I'm on a well, we have very little sediment in our water. I don't have a pre-filter on before my water softener other than my iron sulfur filter, and but then I've got a pre-filter before my UV.
So that's where I have them. And when I change my UV filters, yeah, they're dirty. I change them once a year, but they're not horrible. And the water softeners, like I expect my water softeners easily going to last 20 years, no problem. So generally speaking, you don't need a pre-filter for a water softener unless you have a lot of sediment. Then you definitely do need one. So another question here. I was told that water level should be slightly higher than the salt to reduce scaling in your brine tank. No, the water level needs to be below the salt because it needs to be touching that salt to be able to absorb it, to get the proper dosage of sodium in your brine so that it can properly regenerate your water softener. How do I know what hardness to set my water softener for? Well, again, it comes down to the test. And I mentioned earlier about putting a link down below about that's going to lead you to a video of mine that talks about how to test your water for hardness. But like I say, if all else fails, mail us a water sample. We'll test it for you for free, and then you'll know what to set your water softener for. And again, I talked about earlier in this live stream about doing the settings, etc. So you can check that out if you've tuned in a little bit after that time. So another question was, my water softener uses salt, goes through its cycles correctly, but my water is hard. Now what? Well, I saw one of these about a week or so ago. A local client called me out to their property. They had a big box store water softener, and it was exactly this scenario. It went through its cycles correctly. It was drawing brine correctly. It was putting the water in. It didn't have a salt clog. It was in great shape. It was still using salt, but it wasn't softening the water It wasn't softening the water at all. What's happened is the media is totally gone. It's worn out. And so now you have the choice of replacing that media, which is a messy and or expensive job to do, or just replacing the water softener. And often people just end up replacing the water softener because, if it's more than 10 years old, newer water softeners are much more efficient. They have electronic valves on them that are much easier to control. And so often it just becomes the case. If you want to replace the media in a water softener, I've never done a video on replacing the media in a water softener. Trust me, it's a super, super messy job. Not just replacing it. What do you do with the old media? Where do you do it? Like when we do it outside. We don't do it at the customer's basement, that's for sure. And we definitely don't do it on the customer's property. We bring the tank back here, we replace the media here, and then we reinstall the unit. So it's very, very expensive, and like I say, it's very messy. Often it just makes sense to put the money toward the new unit because the valve, the part at the top, that's of course where most of the money is still 10, 15, 20 years old, whatever it is. So often it just makes more sense just to replace the whole unit. And we've got some other questions here. Do you know how much about the tankless water heaters? I have a Navien, and I'm always looking for more info, especially on the required maintenance it might need. I don't know. The HVAC guys typically know about those. I know that they need to be descaled and things like that. One thing I do definitely know is if you don't have a water softener and those things scale up, you just toss them out because to free them up is almost impossible. Got a question here from Kevin Swale. Got to watch the time. We've only got 11 minutes left. Dirt buildup from rock salt in the brine tank. I just recently switched over to the pellets for that specific reason. It was quite nasty in there, to be honest. Yeah, you're right, Kevin. And I've seen it so many times myself. And it's a big mess. And Kevin goes on to say, yeah, I ended up cleaning it myself. But I don't know if I cleaned it the right way. So perhaps a video from Gary the Water Guy would help others with dirty tanks looking to clean them out. Yeah, no, I think it is a good idea. I did a video on getting rid of salt clog. I did a video, you know what? I think I did do one of the early on videos about cleaning out the brine tank. But I tell you what, if I did it, I'll put a link in the comments section down below. If I didn't do it, I'll enter you into the contest as a suggestion for that, because that is a great video idea. Absolutely, I agree. And and Kevin goes on to say, Kevin Swale, this is, thanks for your videos. I enjoy catching them on Saturday mornings. Yeah, that's great. And I up until about 6 months ago, I just released them whenever I got around to it. Sometimes I'd release 3 in 1 week, and sometimes 3 months would go by and I wouldn't release any. That's changed now. I've got a production schedule, etc. set up, and so I release them every Saturday morning at 5 a.m. This morning was a little bit different because I was trying to promote this event today, so I actually released it at midnight last night. But yeah, it's a great way to see what's new and exciting and what we're up to here and catch some information. I try to keep the videos short and to the point so that you can check it out. And so hopefully I don't bore you. That's definitely not something that we want to do here. But no, I appreciate all your comments and questions down below. That's great. And we got a message here from Hart saying it's a good that we're doing a good job, and that's great. I appreciate those comments. Like I say, we work pretty hard to have some topics that you're interested in, and also some things that can help you out. I mean, the water treatment. Why I started making videos actually about water treatment was I found this big mystique around this industry. No one seemed to know how things work. No one seemed to know how to service things properly and things like that. You had to call the technician. You had to call the guy. Well, the thing is, when I started in this industry, you know what? Those technicians didn't know how the stuff worked either. And a lot of them still to this day don't. And that's why, you know, a lot of these videos, I know a lot of do-it-yourselfers watch them, but whether you're a do-it-yourselfer or a plumber, don't be shocked to find out a lot of plumbers watch my YouTube videos to learn more about water treatment. Because plumbing is such a complex trade. There's so many aspects to it that no one can be an expert in all aspects of it. So like I say, I concentrate on water filtration, water softeners, iron filters, UV lights, you know, things like that. And so there's some great information there. And so like tune in and get the information from us. I've got 250 videos on my channel, so definitely check it out. Lots of information there, and if you have any questions, let me know. Like I say, I often send a link to one of my videos to help you out. And we've got Jerry Clark here. Hi Jerry, thanks for watching us today. I just installed the water softener this morning. Will I start to see results right away? Hey, that's a great question, Jerry. I have just cleaned the calcium from my kettle and I'm looking forward to seeing it stay that way. Yeah, I can believe you. I can believe you do. That's right. I'm sure your significant other does too. Your soft water, your cold water will be soft right away. If you've got a tank type hot water heater, there's going to be untreated, there's going to be soft water going into that hot water heater, and there's going to be mixed water coming out. So it's going to take a while. I usually tell folks 3 or 4 days, if there's a couple people in your home, for that soft water to mix inside your hot water tank and to become all soft water coming out. Like I say, it does take a few days for it to do that. If you've got a tankless hot water heater, your water will be soft in the cold water and hot water right away. You could always drain that tank type hot water heater. It's kind of a waste. So like I say, just wait a few days and you'll have soft water everywhere. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It makes a whole better world for you. But thanks for asking that question, Jerry. That was great. And okay, let's see what other stuff. We've only got a few minutes left here. And so like I say, I'm going to mention a couple more things before I sign off here at 2 o'clock. And that is, like I say, about our contest. We're looking for submissions from you about great topics for Gary the Water Guy to make videos about. I'm going to take the best 3 submissions. I'm going to put them on the community tab of our website. What's the community tab? Let me show you again here. Just fade this over here. If you look, you see the tabs across the top under my Gary the Water Guy YouTube channel. It says Home, Videos, Playlists, and then it says Community. Just click on that. It'll take you right to the Community tab. You can learn more. So I'm going to take the best 3 submissions, put it on the Community tab. You're going to vote on it. I'm going to leave you a week to vote on it. And the winner gets this tool caddy. It's a great tool caddy. I love these things. Goes on the outside of a 5-gallon pail. And you can put all your tools on the outside. Inside go your filters before you do the change. After you've done the filter change, you've got wet filters, you toss them in here to get them out of the house without making a big mess. And that's why I love these things. So you're not going to get the tools. You're not going to get the bucket. You're just going to get the tool caddy. That's going to be the prize. So again, I hope to see lots of people submitting ideas for YouTube videos for me. I love to hear from you. And like I said, the deadline for submitting those ideas is March the 1st at midnight. And then from there, we'll go from there. Okay. So Jerry says, thanks. That's great. And again, I really appreciate you spending some time with me here today. And so let's see what else I got to talk about here today. And what else do I have here for questions? So someone was asking about testing the water, and they got confused between TDS, which is total dissolved solids, and hardness of the water. And I had several comments going back and forth with this individual, and they were asking me, well, my TDS is this, what's my hardness, and this. So TDS is total dissolved solids. So yeah, part of that is the hardness, the calcium, magnesium, but it's not hardness. Your TDS can be high, your hardness can be low. If your hardness is high, your TDS will also be high, but that doesn't mean all of your TDS is caused by hardness. It can be caused by other things like sodium, iron, copper, all kinds of other lead, all kinds of other minerals in your water. So TDS by itself isn't a good reading. Another question I get from time to time is block salt. Can I use block salt in my water softener? The answer is no, you can't. And the reason is the water has to touch the salt to be able to absorb it. So with a block salt, there's very little surface area, right? It's because you don't have all those little tablets with all the little tributaries and all the little areas in between it to absorb the water. So to absorb the salt to make the brine. So a block salt won't work. So you can't use it. Water softener salt is the way to go. I mean, it's available pretty much everywhere, and it's super easy to get and super easy to work with. And can I mix potassium chloride with system saver or water softener salt? Absolutely. You can mix any kind of water. If you're right now using rock salt, and as a result of something you learned today or you learned on one of my videos, you say, oh man, I should be switching over to the pure salt, just add it. As you use up the rock salt, be a good time to clean out that brine tank, as we talked about earlier, and flush out all that dirt that's in the bottom. But you can switch from one kind of salt to the other kind of salt. You just add it, no problem at all. So you can do that. And so Jerry has got another comment here. I just need to hook up the flush drain pipe into my main drain. Any advice on how to tap into a 4-inch main drain? Geez, we really don't like to go into a 4-inch main drain. If you can find 1.5 inches somewhere nearby and tie into that, that would be much better. The 4-inch, that handles the number 2 stuff, right? And so like I say, try to find somewhere else that you can find 1.5 inches where it's just the gray water coming through, and connect to that. That's a much better drain location. If you've got a floor drain, that'd be even better, but if you're in a rural type property, you're probably going out to septic, and that won't tie in with that.
What? We didn't answer your question? You want some more information? Well, click over here. It'll take you right to my next water softener video, and I'll see you there.